Let's face it, crossover episodes totally rule. Everyone loves watching their favorite characters from one TV show suddenly get thrown into another. But sometimes writers get really odd ideas about which shows should cross paths. After several years in development, a 2018 episode of Supernatural featured the Winchester brothers getting sucked into a television and subsequently turned into cartoon versions of themselves. The next thing you know, they're teaming up with the Scooby Doo gang to solve a dastardly mystery. The result is actually pretty darn great. This crazy crossover hits all the right notes, particularly if you're a Scooby Doo fan. At one point, the gang even evades a ghastly ghoul by zipping in and out through various Scooby Doo doors, which is the ultimate running gag. We also get to witness Dean wolf down ridiculously huge sandwiches with Shaggy. And of course, this is said at one point.
Would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for those meddling kids.
Ooh, he said it.
Best of all, the episode never betrays the original cartoon's lighthearted tone. As executive producer Andrew Dabb told USA Today, while this is a slightly more adult version of Scooby Doo, we didn't want to make it this grim and gritty Dark Knight Returns take where Shaggy's got one eye and Velma smokes a cigarette. Good call on that one. These days, The X-Files is such a cultural institution that it's easy to forget just how weird and wonderful the show really is. Take the episode X-Cops, which combined The X-Files with that trashy reality TV show that launched in 1989, Cops. As you may recall, Cops involved real-life police officers busting innumerable frazzled perps. Well, talk about two tastes that taste great together. We're even treated to the Cops theme song in the show's opening moments. And we get those police lights when it's time for a commercial break, although they're superimposed over the X-Files logo. Of course, the LAPD officers here are all played by actors, and they're being assisted by Scully and Mulder, who are in hot pursuit of a scary werewolf.
Wetzel, don't be afraid! It can't hurt you!
Postmodern? Definitely. Weird? Indeed. By rights, this bizarre mashup shouldn't have worked at all, but thanks to Gilligan's deft touch, it quickly became a fan-favorite episode. Mr. Robot is a sharp, politically charged TV series about a rebellious computer programmer named Elliot, played by Rami Malek. Long story short, Elliot uses his genius tech skills to face off against evil corporate overlords. It's edgy and stylish, but ultimately rather somber stuff. It's definitely not the sort of show where you'd expect to meet Alf, the furry alien blowhard who loves to eat cats. But here we are. In 2016, Alf appeared on Mr. Robot, and the segment is just as bizarre as it sounds. To be fair, the whole shebang is basically one of Elliot's many hallucinations. It's not like they bulldozed the entire story just for this one bizarre cameo. Still, that doesn't make it any less surreal to watch Alf as he runs over Gideon, casually goes shopping, and riffs on one of his favorite catchphrases.
Hey, no problemy, Meister.
Even by Mr. Robot standards, this is a super strange plot wrinkle. Michael Scott, the awkward dude played by Steve Carell in the American version of The Office, is not really the world's best boss. And neither is David Brent, his equally awkward equivalent in the original British program, played by Ricky Gervais. A meeting between both men could only be, well, super awkward. And that's exactly what it was when the two characters had a surprise elevator encounter in a 2011 episode. But rather than going down a predictable path, like, say, Scott and Brent having a petty squabble in the hall, the brief encounter is surprisingly upbeat. The two men laugh, trade stories, and even bond over a groan-worthy joke.
No, comedy is a place where the mind goes to tickle itself. That's what she said.
Fans had wanted to see this surreal pair-up for years, which is why it's a shame that Gervais's surprise appearance was leaked before the episode premiered. Still, the scene really couldn't have been more perfect. That said, the idea of Scott and Brent occupying the same universe raises a few continuity questions. After all, the events in the US pilot episode of The Office deliberately mirror those of the English one, sometimes right down to the dialogue. So it's rather odd that these two men meet one another, and all while being filmed for two different documentaries about two different, equally dismal offices. Perhaps it's best not to overthink this one too much. If you happen to remember any episode of NBC's 90s sitcom Mad About You, it's probably the 1992 episode The Apartment. The episode centers around an argument between lead characters Paul and Jamie when the latter realizes her husband never let the lease expire on his old bachelor pad. Instead, he's been subletting it for years, just in case their relationship falls apart and he suddenly finds himself needing to move. By the end of the episode, Paul decides to give up the apartment to its current subletter. To confirm this, he visits the old place, knocks on the door, and guess who answers? None other than Seinfeld character Cosmo Kramer, played by Michael Richards.
Is this yours? I don't believe so. It's weird. I don't know where it came from.
What a scream. As cool as the crossover hoped to be, NBC kinda killed the fun by overhyping it in a slew of promotions. Not only did they ruin the surprise, they set expectations way too high for this super short scene. Oh well, we'll get over it one day. Ask any diehard Friends fan whether Phoebe has any siblings, and they'll probably tell you all about her sinister twin sister, Ursula. In fact, Ursula existed as a fictional character long before Phoebe ever did, and the first time we met her wasn't on Friends. No, it was on Mad About You, a show that none of us will be able to escape in our lifetimes, apparently. In fact, Mad About You premiered in 1992, a few years before Friends came around in 1994. Actress Lisa Kudrow nabbed the role of Ursula long before getting cast as Phoebe. And once Friends became a monster hit, everyone realized that Kudrow playing two different roles on two different NBC sitcoms might be weird for audiences, particularly since the shows aired back to back. So the writers cooked up a simple solution. They rewrote Phoebe and Ursula as twins, thereby linking the Friends and Mad About You universes together. In the Season 1 Friends episode, The One with Two Parts, Part 1, all sorts of hilarity ensues when Helen Hunt makes an appearance as her Mad About You character, Jamie, and mistakes Phoebe for Ursula.
Hi, it's us. Right, and it's me.
Earlier in the same episode, Joey and Chandler are similarly confused when they mistake Ursula for Phoebe.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, I was over there, and then you said, "Excuse me, hello, miss," so now I'm here.
No. How come you're working here?
Throughout the 90s, Jim Carrey mugged his way through a number of films, including The Mask and Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. The supernatural vigilante and goofy animal detective really don't have too much in common beyond the actor who originally played them, but the characters did appear together in cartoon form. Twice, actually. The first time was in an episode of The Mask the Animated Series entitled The Ace Man Cometh. Then the adventure, such as it was, continued in the Ace Ventura Pet Detective episode Have Mask Will Travel. Sounds fun in theory, but this animated crossover was missing a key ingredient, namely Jim Carrey. Ventura was voiced by Michael Dangerfield, while Rob Paulsen voiced the Mask. As a result, this not-so-epic crossover basically found two voice actors bouncing their best Jim Carrey impersonations off one another. Still, this two-parter is a fun novelty, if you can accept it for what it is.
Alrighty then.
In a 2000 episode of Star Trek Voyager, 7 of 9 is captured, imprisoned, and forced to fight a character played by The Rock, otherwise known as Dwayne Johnson. As you can see, he's quite clearly wearing some pronounced forehead bumps, and he's called a Pindari throughout the episode, presumably to prevent the Star Trek timeline from getting irreparably torn asunder.
I assure you, resistance is futile.
So is all your talk.
But Dwayne Johnson is definitely doing his rock act as only Dwayne Johnson can. It's a deeply strange episode, and it marks one of the first times Johnson acted outside of his wrestling wheelhouse as anyone but himself. The episode aired a full year before The Mummy Returns turned him into a bona fide movie star. That cocky swagger was a clear sign that bigger and theoretically better roles awaited. Back in the early 90s, NBC was airing 3 spin-off sitcoms all set in the same universe of Miami, Florida: Golden Girls, Empty Nest, and Nurses. On November 9th, 1991, the powers that be decided to have all 3 shows host a truly bizarre event that they called Hurricane Saturday. The whole thing was an interminable TV event that really had to be seen to be believed.
Saturday, a 2-hour television event comes to NBC when the Golden Girls, Empty Nest, and Nurses get hit by a hurricane.
Long story short, the characters in each series had to survive the trauma of not one but 2 fictional hurricanes hitting in rapid succession. It would be remiss not to tell you that their names were Hurricane Gil and Hurricane Heidi.
Carol, guess what? I just heard on the radio, Hurricane Heidi's changed direction and it's headed straight for us.
Throughout this double whammy disaster, several characters cross over from one show to another. Fortunately, no one got hurt, except the people who tuned in to watch. Hurricane Saturday turned out to be a huge success, so NBC tried it again in 1994. And this time, the disaster was called Blackout Thursday.
Thursday, the lights go out on NBC. It's Blackout Thursday.
Blackout!
It's comedy in the dark.
Oh, and guess what? The whole event starts when Mad About You's Jamie Buckman accidentally causes a major blackout in New York City. Yes, it's her again. The blackout ends up seriously impacting the Friends characters, too. Remember when Chandler gets stuck inside that ATM booth? You can blame Jamie for that. In fact, at this point, you can blame Jamie for all your problems. The blackout carried over into the short-lived Dabney Coleman sitcom Madman of the People, but the folks at Seinfeld totally opted out, which was perhaps wise. Believe it or not, this kind of stunt was replicated, or at least parodied, a third time in 2011. The Fox event Night of the Hurricane crossed over Family Guy, American Dad, and The Cleveland Show. Nothing like a natural disaster to bring all your favorite and least favorite characters together. The Flintstones premiered in 1960, and the Jetsons hit the tube 2 short years later. But somehow it took almost 3 decades for the prehistoric clan to meet the far-out family from the future. Well, it finally happened in the 1987 TV movie The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones. The plot involves Elroy and crew getting mixed up in a time machine malfunction that accidentally shuttles them to the prehistoric era.
Maybe we've gone so far into the future, the time has started all over again.
As you've probably guessed, the two families become fast friends, but that's not to say their meetup is smooth sailing all the way.
Hold it. Hold it. I said hold it, not disappear.
Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite shows are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.